Africa, Colombia, Thailand, and Chile, the home countries of these airline groups, they have not provided financial support to the airlines, to these specific airlines or to the airline sector generally. And I should note that these 6 airlines do hope to restructure while in bankruptcy. They you know, a lot of media have used the terms collapse, but I don't exactly agree with that term. You're not really collapsed until you're liquidated, or you have to shut down entirely. But the hope is that these 6 will emerge from bankruptcy protection successfully. I think all 6 actually have very good chances. Other maybe weaker airlines, smaller airlines, would probably struggle to survive bankruptcy, and some of those haven't gone under yet, but might in the future as this crisis continues. But these 6, I think, are all 6 will most likely survive, which is at least the good news there. Although obviously anybody loaning money to these airlines or have money owed is in a bit of a precarious situation now as they go through bankruptcy. Okay, and so this is a list of financial support and Asia Pacific specifically. So government support comes in different forms. I break it up into financial support and general support. Financial support is financial specific, like loans, loan guarantees, or equity, in some cases, capital infusions directly into the airlines. While general support, it generally is more industry wide. It's open to other kinds of companies besides airlines, and often is more like fees, taxes, and general kind of support schemes like wage schemes. I'll get into general in a minute, but I'm just talking specifically about financial support because that's what's kind of triggered these bankruptcies in that first slide. And I'm, again, focusing only on Asia Pacific for the rest of this presentation, just because this is an Asia Pacific focused webinar, and for the interest of time, it would take too long to go through what's happening globally. But so globally, there's been actually over 30 countries providing government financial support to airlines, and 10 in Asia Pacific. And this is tracking countries that have made commitments to either their individual airlines or multiple airlines. So in some cases, countries have only picked certain airlines, and some have kind of opened it up to loans to all airlines. So Australia, this is alphabetical. Australia is on this list, even though Virgin Australia obviously didn't get financial support, hence ended up in bankruptcy. However, they only provided money to the regional airlines, Rex and some of the smaller regional airlines. The argument there is that the regional airlines provide a essential service to smaller communities, so they qualified, but Virgin Australia didn't qualify. Other countries here, like China, basically had this thing called coronavirus loans very early on because they were the first ones to get the virus. They provided, loans were available to all airlines. Indonesia has several airlines, but they've only been providing support, and that was pretty recently, to Garuda. And Singapore, which is their government investment arm through a rights issue. But South Korea, for example, they've actually provided loans to 8 airlines. So basically all the airlines there have already received financial support. Taiwan also, all airlines are eligible for financial support. I think so far the main 2 ones, EVA and China Airlines, have actually received loans. So 10 countries in Asia Pacific so far, and there's actually probably other countries, but they just haven't publicly announced it. Especially smaller countries that have flag carriers, like for example, like a Brunei, for example, small country, 1 airline. It's 100% owned by the government. It's pretty safe to assume that they will get more money, as they've always had, to get through this crisis, but they just haven't, come out with a public announcement. So there's probably more than 10 countries. But I think the important note here is that there's some major countries missing from here. India, Japan, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand are particularly been singled out, and IATA and the APA has mentioned this previously, specifically saying that these countries need to provide support. All these countries have talked about it. Some are in different stages than others in terms of providing it, but most likely, at least a few of these countries that I just mentioned will not provide support in the end, and that could make the airlines, in a vulnerable position. I would say less so in Japan because the airlines there are relatively strong and they have a big domestic market, but certainly in the other countries, we could see consolidation or bankruptcies, in addition to Thai Airways bankruptcy already, which Thai Airways was asking for a loan or bailout, but the government didn't provide it, and now the government instead is supporting their restructuring attempt. So under general packages, the first main element here I have is wage subsidies. There's and I separate this out because I find this is the most significant of the general benefits. Again, a general benefit can apply to all companies. So in some cases, a ground handling company and all sorts of companies in the aviation supply chain and spectrum can qualify for these schemes. And generally what it does is it provides 75 to 80% of wages for several months, where the government basically is either reimburses the employer for it or pays the employee directly if the employee is temporarily furloughed because of this crisis, because aviation is one of the impacted industries. But there are other industries that are covered under this, like tourism, for example, hotels, F&B in some cases are covered as well. So these schemes are not specific for aviation. In some cases, like the US, for example, and Singapore, they've specified aviation as well as other industries, but in most countries, they're just providing for everyone. There's over 30 of these globally, but only 4 in Asia Pacific that I kind of know of, although there might be others because, again, they're combined with bigger packages, so they're harder to sometimes spot from an aviation perspective. But Australia, Hong Kong, New Zealand, and Singapore are the 4 ones that are certainly significant to point out here. A lot of other countries might have some benefits for workers, but not these kind of schemes where they're taking over the wages for 75 to 80%, which is very significant. And a lot of the smaller, poorer countries, I would say in Asia, they have aid packages where, if a worker is laid off, they might provide some kind of minimum package just to make sure that, that they can, have enough money to buy food and things, but not the same kind of scheme. So these are just very important because they allow aviation companies to maintain jobs in this time of crisis, so that when the recovery happens, the workers are still employed and are still there. And the argument is that, if you maintain the jobs, then the overall economy is better because, you don't have as much unemployment, but also the airlines and aviation industry is in better position to put back capacity and to support a larger operation once the recovery happens. Because otherwise, a lot of the workers that are trained for aviation might end up in other areas, and it'll be hard to recall them. And then general industry support, which again is basically a whole range of other types of benefits. There's a lot of aviation specific benefits in these packages, like airport fees, air navigation fees, franchise fees, which has an element for ground handling as well as so any company that has a franchise at an airport, a licensing fee to ground handle, they might get a waiver or a reduction in that fee. And lots of taxes and licensing fees as well. Licensing fees is generally a Civil Aviation Administration thing where they provide reduction or waive fees for a few months. So there's a lot of examples of this. I mentioned 9 here. There's probably a few others as well, but it varies a lot. Each country is providing a different package. Some are more significant than others, but in a lot of cases, I would have to say a lot of these packages are not very significant. And the reason is most of the fees that are being reduced are tied to flying, especially for the airlines. So if you have reduced fees, like airport fees, related fees, use landing fees, gate fees, this kind of thing. If you're not flying, you're not really receiving the benefit. And like the wage schemes, a lot of these benefits are only 3 to 6 months. So by the time you're flying again later on, the benefit might not be there, and that creates a problem later on because if in 6 months' time, if the industry will still be down quite significantly, it won't be the recovery is going to take a few years, but all these benefits go away, including the wage schemes and these other general stuff. This is going to hit airlines hard and could actually lead to more financial issues, more bankruptcies from airlines. And this is my last slide. I go back to the bankruptcy thing here again, for at least for the airlines. We've had 6 bankruptcies in 2 months, but that's not that many considering this extent of this crisis. Again, there would have been a lot more if a lot of countries hadn't come forward with support, but there will be more in the coming months. First of all, some countries airlines are trying to talk to countries now and still get these packages, but not all of them will ultimately provide packages, and some of those airlines might end up bankrupt. And also, combination of what I was just mentioning, the non-financial, the general support, the wage schemes, and the general benefits will expire, and that will push up their costs at a time where they still have limited revenues or much lower than normal revenues. So that could push more airlines into bankruptcies. And also, even next year or even the year after, I see some airlines that have been able to get support packages, financial support packages. The money they've received is not enough for 3 years or 2 years, which is the length of the downturn. With maybe the exception of Singapore Airlines and a few of the other big ones, but most of them are only will provide enough funds for a year or so, and then they'll have to go back to the government for more, and the government might not be able to provide more the second time around, and that could lead to more bankruptcies. So I see kind of, instead of mass bankruptcies, which some people had predicted a couple months ago that they'd be mass bankruptcies by the end of May, that 6 is not mass, but I see, a bunch of, so far a group of 6, and then maybe a few more in the next few months, a few more next year. So the overall picture is pretty gloomy, but, but not mass bankruptcies is kind of, which is more manageable, small groups of bankruptcies, small waves of bankruptcies. And most airlines will still make it through even bankruptcy protection, and most airlines hopefully won't have to go bankrupt. Africa and Latin America, I've highlighted as particularly a concern. Again, this presentation's on Asia, but Latin America and Africa are the 2 regions where we've had the least support. And that's why we've seen LATAM and Avianca, the 2 largest Latin American carriers, and also a couple African carriers, Mauritius and Khmer, already go under bankruptcy protection. Those regions are particularly concerned. So if you guys want more information on Africa, Latin America, or any other region, just please contact me. I've done quite a lot of research globally on this issue, so happy to share it with anybody who contacts me directly. So I just thank you for your time, and
thank you, Brendan.
Q&A
really
later.
Interesting stuff. Thank you, and we will pick up on some of those points again a little bit later on in the Q&A. I'm going to move it along and now welcome Thomas Leipert, Regional Director, Asia Pacific Ground Support at JBT Aerotech, as our next presenter. Welcome, Thomas.
Yeah, hi, welcome.
There we go. The screen is now yours. I'll turn my video off. Thomas is going to be updating us on the latest developments in GSE market in Asia and strategies for GSE during the pandemic. So over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Max, for the invitation to be able to join this webinar, this first GHI virtual conference. Just a quick introduction. So my name is Thomas Leipert. I'm the Regional Director for JBT Aerotech. I'm based in Singapore. As you can hear, also I'm French. First of all, I would like to express my deepest thoughts to all people affected by COVID-19, and a big thank you to all frontline members, especially the ones who working in the hospital to fight this virus. I will start my presentation just to show some picture of our equipment to show you and to show like how GBT is helping the industry. So first one is the C30i in Bangladesh, unloading some medical supply. We have a Commander 15 also in India with SpiceJet, loading some medical cargo for Cambodia. And this is, you can see our customer very happy to load some PPE and face mask in Tenerife airport. Some commander also in the US to load some Amazon ULDs. And to finish, just a small picture of the Instagram account of Sir Richard Branson on the Virgin Atlantic. So I don't know if Virgin Atlantic is still on, but yeah, this is a picture from him. An overview of JBT. JBT is a corporation. So we have two divisions. So we have the food tech division and aerotech division. So I'm part of the aerotech division. So JBT globally is a 2 billion company. We have 6,000 people worldwide. And so I'm part of the JBT aerotech division under the ground support equipment. Just to give you also background, like a lot of people know our previous name, FMC. Now the name since 2008, we changed the name to JBT, John Bean Technology. It stands for the name of the founder of the company of FMC in the beginning, Mr. John Bean in 1888. So JBT, so you can see a lot of machines today still with the FMC logo on some airports, but it's a JBT machine. Some of our products, so we have some tractors, pushback tractors, loaders, transporters, passenger steps, some GPU, and always the three things to remember about JBT is a great reliability, easy to operate, and easy to maintain. We have the same type of machine on electrical version also. So the loaders, the pushback tractors, passenger steps, and transporters on electrical version. And everything to also I want to introduce our value, because value is very important at JBT on a day-to-day basis with our customer and also with our team members. So integrity, accountability, relentless improvement, and teamwork. With the most important is the customer first as the foundation of this value. Now I'm just going to explain how we can manage this crisis from a GSC point of view, and to give you a bit of tips what we're doing also during this crisis and what we can do beyond this crisis COVID-19. So we care for our teams and your team. So it means that during this period, the most important thing is the health and the well-being of our team member and people. We also need to respect, the safe distancing measures, especially in Singapore, that we are very strict in terms of wearing the mask and everything. But most important is to take care of our people and to go through this crisis. So this is wearing mask, wearing gloves and safety glasses. This is some tools, I'm sure some platform that we are all now working from home. So we are doing a lot of meetings through two platforms, Zoom and Teams, to be in contact with our customer, to help our customer, and to provide some solution to engage them. So we are doing that. I'm sure most of you are using this platform on a day-to-day basis. We care for your machine. A short presentation about storage of the GSC machine. So first of all, by preparation and storage. So preparation, the crisis happened very quickly, especially in Asia. But so most of you didn't really have the time to prepare the storage of the machine. But most important to keep in mind is to park the machine in a safe place if you can, under a roof if you have the place, to protect from the weather. So it can be rain, it can be sun, it can be snow. In Asia, we don't have this issue in Southeast Asia. But yeah, so this is the first thing. And also safety first, all the time. Be sure that your people, your technicians are wearing the correct equipment when they are moving the machine. During the storage phase, so this is basically where we stand now, you need, depending of your situation and the number of technicians available, you need to still take care of the machine. So you need to grease the machine, need to check the battery, also trying to protect the machine to avoid corrosion. And also if you have the possibility, try to repair and to fix the machine during the storage time. Now we are going more to the return to service because we are more flight coming, but even if it's still very low. But return to service is also very basic, very few points that you remember. First, you have to do a visual inspection of the machines to see if there is no damage, big damage during the storage time. You need to check the brakes. This is the most important thing. So testing the brake of the machine. Check the oil, the hydraulics oil also. Check your pressure tire. And everything is normally each OEM have a special guideline for return to service. So just please refer to these manuals to get all this information. We did a special webinar with IATA in April. One of the speakers was our engineering manager, Kevin Cecil for loaders. You can find this webinar, it's still online. You can read this webinar on the YouTube or IATA website. Now we care for your business. One thing is like, just let you read this, this picture is who led the digital transformation of your company. So you know now we need to move on the digital transformation. And most important, but who did that is the COVID-19. At GBT, we're already on the digital transformation for quite a long time. We have an online training platform. So today we have more than 70 training courses available. It's called our GBT University. So it's like 70 video, is roughly 20 hours of video on cargo loaders, pushback tractors, on basic system training. So this is, I think, a right time today for you people, for your technician to check this video, to have a look, to be trained on machines, on GSE machines. We have also a spare parts e-commerce platform. So this is something that is also going on. You can buy all spare parts through our online platform. Just to remember, in Singapore, we have also a local stock for spare parts. Finally, we are coming with some new type of program to help our customers, especially the airlines and ground handler. We know that buying new machine will be difficult, so we are coming with we need to be very agile in this new environment. And so we are coming with some new flexible programs. So the first one will be the rent to buy program. So we have we have some equipments available for this type of program. So pushback tractors, loaders, some M60 also are available. So if you want more information, don't hesitate to contact me later on. Also, we want to, based on the new investment, you know, it will be very difficult. We are providing also a COVID-19 refurb program. Basically, it's like we're going to send you a technician to your workshop to assess the machine and to repair the machine, to refurb the machine for the new season. We can do that in Australia, we can do that in Thailand and in Singapore. That's it for me. Stay safe, stay strong. We will meet again soon. I hope to see you very soon on face-to-face. If you want any information, you can reach me by email, and I'm waiting for the Q&A session. Thank you, Max.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Well done. Thank you for that. Fascinating stuff. I am now going to introduce our final presenter, who is Javid Malik, Group Chief Operations Officer at AirAsia. Welcome to Javid. Hopefully we'll get you online. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
And Javid is going to be updating us on AirAsia's latest stage of operations, and I'm very keen, I'm sure all of our guests today are, Javid, to hear about how you're implementing your social distancing into operations and some of the changes that this virus has led to. So I will hand over to you, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Max, and thanks, Brendan, Thomas, Yakub, my fellow panelists here and presenters, but also everybody that's joined in. I know it's not easy, and I see a few of my friends out there. John Lillis, the weatherman, has joined. I'm glad to see, and we missed the GHI events. I look forward to getting back and being interactive again on an engagement level personally at some stage in the future. So let me share my presentation with you and take you through what we are doing fundamentally, which is about building confidence and getting our guests flying back. For us, everything is about rebuilding confidence, building trust, and getting a safe environment so people can want to travel again, because I think it's going to take some time to get that confidence back. So hopefully you should be able to see my presentation here now. Great. I hope that is visible to you all. So yeah, as Max introduced, so I'm Javid Malik, and I'm the Group Chief Operations Officer for AirAsia Airlines. This is the affiliate of several airlines across ASEAN region, and I look after all of the operational delivery aspects of both on the ground and in the air, with a particular focus to digitize and transform operations in a digital way. That was what I came and joined the business for a year ago. COVID just happened to accelerate some of the things that we're doing that I'm going to take you through. So a little bit about who we are. We're not an airline anymore. We are a digital travel company, and that's one of the key big differences that Tony Fernandez, one of our founders, has been working on probably for the last 4 or 5 years, trying to transform the business into becoming a lifestyle organization through AirAsia.com. 270 plus aircraft, 279 actually now. We served about 1,500 flights a day, and we had over 110 million passengers last year in 2019, and we were expecting to do about 118 to 120 million in 2020 pre-COVID. We generate 6 petabytes for all of us who are old Luggites and dinosaurs of kilobytes and megabytes and probably gigabytes. Petabytes is the big beast of data, and there's 6 petabytes of data that we generate monthly, which is very important to how we do business going forward. A little bit about where we've come from and where we're going in terms of the impact of COVID. In the last 3 months of 2019, you'll see there, we averaged about 1,500 flights in a day, sorry. That was a daily number, 1,556 is what I had. And here you look at February, March and April 2020, and obviously from February, March all the way down to April, where we had operations, albeit very limited domestically. We handled 18 flights. So a hit of almost 98, 99%. And in the passenger numbers, 240,000 is what we averaged in those months. And right now we're carrying less than 410 in the month of April on average per day passenger numbers. So extreme cuts there. And obviously we need to get confidence back to get people back in the air. How are we going to do it? Well, we wouldn't be a digital travel company if it wasn't going to be through technology, right? And what my team and I have been working on for the last year, which has now been accelerated, as I said, for COVID, is to do the digital transformation. And what you see here are a host of technologies that we have developed or partnered with, and I've introduced and have been introducing over the last year, but now have accelerated. So on the very left, the VPod and VBot. This is with our partnership now with VisionBox, who is now our biometric partner for the journey ahead. And this will be our faces recognition travel program, where you use your ID and you don't use any paper. You don't basically have any contact other than using your physical face and eye biometrics. QuickTag is a development of my team in-house. We call it QT, and this is a printer that will use your biometrics, your face, to generate a bag tag and print out the bag tag. It includes a scale, it includes excess baggage weighing, and you can pay using your face once we've linked it with people like Alipay, WeChat in Asia here that is very big, and the other pay wallets as well. Mobile check-in, we've been doing that for a while, but you now can do that with your face, register your face, use your mobile, and not have to touch a single kiosk or a desk. Contactless kiosk, we went live with this last week, about 8-9 days ago. We're using a QR code with the conventional kiosk. You can print your bag tag and a boarding card if you still need it based on your regulator, or using your phone, so you don't touch the kiosk at all. This was an in-house development, but in partnership with ICTS of Europe, who developed an SDK kit for us to be able to make the printing happen very quickly. Thermal scanners are being introduced already, but we're going to integrate those with our face biometric reading solution, hopefully with our partners VisionBox or separately, but the intention is to bring them into the same process. Digital payments I already talked about. Passport scanning goes live in about 9 days to 12 days time, where we will actually take your passport, visa scan, all electronic in the back end in the app, and not have you to show the physical document. So again, removing the need for passengers to take out, guests as we call them, the document and hand it to staff, so that there is no contact at all. And mobile scanners are there for our passenger reconciliation. So as you go through landside to airside, we use biometrics to read you so that we also know where you are in terms of location and time of travel to the gates. That's some of the contactless. The travel journey just explained, I won't go through it again, but basically this is a visualization of our end-to-end seamlessly connected and safer, faster experience, all the way through to bag drop, where we're putting self-bag drop machines in. And then at the boarding gate, we've got a VBOT, a VPod, as Visionbox call it for us, where you'll actually be boarded with this unit, which is biometric with a thermal camera built in before you get onto the aircraft in a social distanced manner. My team's also working on an algorithm on where we can actually identify who to board from a logical sequential boarding from the back of the aircraft, but also to get the right level of separation between people using data and machine learning fundamentally is what we're applying there. Here's the kiosk, a little bit about the kiosk, the picture there that you'll see of how we've created that. Passenger doesn't touch the kiosk whatsoever, all in your hand. So what this is one of 3 documents that we created, and my team and I have done a very, very comprehensive, what we call safe at work or operation document. It's a very extensive, detailed process of every measure we've taken for COVID response, and also safe to fly. So safe at work and safe to fly, very detailed documents. From those documents come out this one, which describes each of the stages: curbside, check-in, security, boarding gates, ramp, into the arrival. For example, where we're now working with airports to look at how do we sanitize bags back on the arrival through sort of archways or UVC lights to make the bag sanitized to prevent any potential cross-contamination of COVID infection. Pick up your bag in a social distance manner on the belts. If there is a complaint, you've lost your bag or damaged it, we're digitizing that completely as the passenger irregularity report, the PIR, making that a digital, complete contactless experience within your AirAsia app. So of course, you're all going to go download after this conference. All 380, 400 of you, please go to airasia.com, download the app, and join the contactless revolution with us. Be much appreciated. Customs and immigration, of course, are beasts of their own, so we haven't been able yet to integrate with them. But what we find, and what I'm really enjoying about this particular challenge that we face, and I've got to say I'm enjoying it because for the first time, we always talked about cash is king, right? That's without saying goes. But reality is we've got a new word that I use now, which is cash is king and collaboration is queen. And we need to make sure that we're really collaborating extensively, more than we ever have done if we're going to get through this as an industry. And what we see is the regulators, the sovereign functions really come to the table and working with us, accelerating technology adoption and actually encouraging us to trial things with them very quickly. So a good shout out to those guys. It's a pity that it's taken an infection, but the reality is that, they recognize the need and the potential for it. So that's on the ground. Safe flying, also in the air. We've got to get people confident once they're in the cabin. So what are we doing there? A similar flow, contactless reporting for duty. We developed the first, for us, crew report system that is completely contactless. They don't need to touch a keyboard or a mouse. Everything comes onto their iPad or phone for all of the shift briefings, reporting, voyage reports, and staff briefings. Of course, we're giving them the PPE. They wear gloves, our pilots and our cabin crew. They wear masks. They've got suits for any of the high-risk flights, sanitization, liquids and disinfectants, all being provided. And we give them 12 pairs per flight each, so there's enough to go through our average 2 or 3 flight hour sectors. Onboard announcements have been tailored for social distancing, but as well as some of the service changes, like the product that we're not serving hot food unless it's pre-ordered. We're not serving just on the fly purchases. So you can imagine from a financial point of view, that's going to hit us. But it's the right and safe thing to do, and we have to take that hit in order to protect confidence and get people back in the air. rather than just try to drive the revenue on its own. We've removed our in-flight magazines. We've removed all of the non-safety related documentation. So all we've got are the safety cards, which have been laminated, and then they get cleaned and wiped every flight on every turnaround. Of course, on the cleaning side, we've done an extensive turnaround, transit and overnight cleaning regime. We're trialing at the moment UVC. We've been using fogging techniques to use specific cleaning materials as recommended by Airbus and ICAO, but we're trying to explore new technologies that allow me to drive the turnaround faster. The current conventional cleaning and disinfection is taking too long. It's sort of 27 minutes to 30 minutes. We need to get that down to between 5 to 8 minutes, if not less, but still have the safety standards if we can really be efficient once we ramp up back to operations. Crew reporting, just a bit of a picture on how we use the technology, all on their own phones. Each one of our crew have their own phone, so that's not a problem. Some of our lovely girls and boys that you see, sadly now they're covered in aprons, and they're covered in gloves, and they're covered in masks. But behind them, please remember, there is still a great personality. They are still going to be warm and attentive to you as much as they can, and they're there to serve you, but they're going to do it safely, and they're going to protect themselves, and they're going to protect you, the traveling public, when you travel with us. Some of the steps, as I mentioned earlier, we've changed some of the greetings. There's obviously no contact in terms of handshaking, and then just good disciplines and hygiene being enforced in terms of the briefings to our crew community. We do social distancing from the crew report to the aircraft, but on board the aircraft, we do not as an airline support social distancing on board. There is no merit for it. There's no scientific support that can do it, and there's no practicality on board an aircraft, especially at the 2 meter distance that really is required. But we feel with the HEPA filters and all the sanitation measures we're taking, the aircraft are as safe as you can get anywhere right now. We've also looked after our people at work, where we're looking at the new norm, and I'm leading a team on how do we corporately across the group work in the future. What do our facilities look like? What does our workplace look like? And we're looking at how people can continue to work. In our case, we will continue to work from home, 98% of us, till about to the end of this year. However, we're reviewing that on a 3-month basis at this point. Overwhelmingly, more than 70% of our workforce that was surveyed last week responded with that they are happy and comfortable and feel well connected and communicated to continue to work from home. Some of the things we're doing to keep people busy at home and occupied, and some of our CEOs mentioned it, including Bo at the bottom left, he's our president, and Sunil in India on the top right, are engaging with their teams using Zoom. We've got cooking classes live on different days. You see the sort of Monday to Sunday roster plan where we've got a full engagement activity using Zoom, from cooking classes to learning all sorts of lessons, to artwork, to best engagement, to social time with our teams, to formal meetings that I'm having up at the top left on a regular and daily basis. As I said, cash is king. That's what we've got to be able to support and continue with if we're going to have a business. But collaboration is queen, and we've got to keep working together. And this is why I'm very pleased to be able to take part of this event, and GHI that we've supported for many, many years. And I have personally, and as well as a business, we look forward to working with you ongoing. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Javed. That's brilliant stuff. Thank you. Well, that is the last of our presentations, but we're gonna move into your questions, try and get through as many as possible in the next sort of 45 minutes to an hour or so. I'm going to kick off though by bringing in our final panelist, Yakub. He's not got a presentation today, but I just, as our ground handling representative, be very keen, Yakub, just for a sort of summary update, touching, I guess, on a lot of what Javed has brought in there, on the operational environment you're in and some of the challenges you are experiencing there at SATS. So Yakub, if you kick us off, and then we'll start to answer some of the questions.
Okay, thanks, Max. Thanks, fellow panelists. My name is Yakub PPD. I'm the CEO Gateway Services in SATS. I will do just a few comments, and also to support principally what Javed has just presented. It has been, and this has been an unprecedented pandemic. We are operating flights in Singapore about 10% of what we used to do at the pre-COVID level. And what has happened in the last couple of months has been intense. We are very fortunate that the Singapore government has introduced 4 versions of the budget. The last one was announced a couple of days ago, and that has allowed us to maintain stability in our operations and keeping our workforce motivated at the same time. So there's been a series of government release and rebates. But really, what is important as we deal with the issues at hand is also to take the opportunity to right-size, to reshape, to reorganize, and most importantly, to reskill. Because I think in the post-COVID world, a lot of things will be very different from what it used to be before. So job redesign is something that occupies our time a great deal. And as we work and focus on this very sharply, we also realize that we don't operate in a silo. We can't afford to operate in silos. And so the ecosystem comes into play. How we deal with our airline customers in Singapore, primarily with the base carriers, how we deal with the airport management companies, with the airport regulators, and how we make and transform the passenger and customer experience at Changi is really has to be a concerted effort to make the traveling experience safer and more assuring to the traveling public, because nothing more that we like to see than to see an upturn happen quickly and to see the effects of the pandemic wane over the next few months. Central to that is safety. In all the job reskilling and in the job redesign, safety remains and will continue to be our first priority. So that will shape a great deal of what we will do. And also in the case of passenger experience, working with everyone to make sure the safe distancing, the contactless boarding that Javed talked about, and so on, how we can contribute and work together to make this as efficient as possible. Because we are a hub airport. We don't have any domestic flights in Singapore. So we are all 100% hub, 100% international connections. So the hubbing experience also needs to be efficient, at the same time safe as we move forward. So underpinning all of that is really the term that I like, heard about it recently, is that creativity and innovation. So I think as we innovate and find new and better ways of working, how to be creative at the same time, because we recognize that unlike SARS that we experienced some time back, which was fortunately then a V-shaped kind of recovery, I think this pandemic, I think we are largely expecting a broad U-shaped recovery. And and I don't think we expect to see flight volumes go back up to 100% anywhere, anytime soon. And so this is the time that we must use very wisely and also very prudently to innovate and to redesign jobs and serve the customers better and more safely in the future. So that's my response.
Thank you.
Largely to the presentations that have been done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaqub. I really like, Javed, your epigram there about cash is king, collaboration is queen. But just to kick it off, I mean, I guess if that's the case, then the joker in the pack here is who pays for all these social distancing measures? Because we can see there from your presentation, I mean, the enormous complexity this is requiring and the investment that is going into passenger processing, you know, from extra, I guess, buses to get people onto the aircraft, all the way through to the sort of limits in throughput of passengers at check-in.
Yeah.
You know, who picks up the tab? I'd be interested to get you all to comment on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, for us, we're a low-cost carrier. One of the pillars and the core fundamentals of our business has been and will be to keep the fares low. We are about engaging people to allow them to travel. You know, our motto is everyone can fly. We've achieved that because we've made sure that the fares are kept low. It's very easy to put a ringer on here or there or $1 back on and try to recover that from the passenger, from the guest. But we don't subscribe to that in our company. We believe that we should be driving. In fact, the CEO is adamant that we actually look to remove $1 every time if we can on the fare itself, because the ancillary opportunities, in our case now, what data provides, the engagement opportunities and connecting the guest through the ecosystem. You know, we've got Santam Food, we've got Teleport, our cargo business, and cargo has done a tremendous bit of work in this time. You know, we can't applaud, and I don't think they were ever appreciated enough in the first place, but they really have come to the forefront in terms of logistics, saving the day for aviation as much as it can. I think we would have seen many more airlines gone down much before. So there are other revenue streams that we have to tap and maximize. And of course, as Jakub correctly said, our cost base, I mean, we can't stay the way we are. We've got to just get even smarter. And the way that we're doing that is doing it through technology, which is why for a very a legacy hands-on operations guy who was really rolled my sleeves up and get out there with men and people, we've gone down the technology route, and I've evolved into looking at digital transformation for the last few years. That's the way we reduce our costs. And by doing so, one example is when we achieve our full rollout for Vision Box and we have our entire facial recognition experience from the guest, I would need almost 1,100 less check-in agents across my 6 countries, across my 160 airports. I wouldn't need 1,100 check-in agents. Now, some of those would get repurposed and reskilled into other capabilities. For that, we've opened a digital academy where we're teaching people how to do data science, digital data related type and programming in-house in partnership with Google. So, you know, it's about finding different ways to get the cost and the recoveries, but the airline has to pay its bill. And of course, the airports, as I said, the collaboration is queen. I see the airports stepping forward. I mean, they've got to invest in thermal cameras, baggage screening systems for disinfections, etc. So the burden is being shared. Now, there will be a conversation later as to whether they think they've got to charge that back to airlines. But I think at the moment, people are stepping up, and that's the good thing.
What's your position, Jakub, on price? And you know, are you guys going to be able to deliver, given the depleted volumes and the peaky nature of low volumes? Are you able to absorb some of these changes within the existing pricing structure, or are you looking to pass them on to airlines?
I think as far as possible, we look at opportunities to collaborate. There will be obviously no choice that everyone has to bear their share of the burden. But to give an example, as we see the lockdown impacting passenger travel, but we have also taken the opportunity to use our resources more prudently, more wisely, and more collaboratively in supporting airlines that are converting passenger aircraft into freight carrying for freight carrying purposes. Involves a huge number of resources to do cargo loading in the passenger cabin, but we're not really costing all of that and make the operation untenable. So I think what we want to see is to support the airlines' growth, to see the cargo trade flows remaining open, to support airlines' efforts to also transport essential medical devices. And in that process, we become part of a member of a community without having to pass on the entire charges to carriers, and then all we do is we become a service provider. So we are doing it as constructively and responsibly as we can, so that we can help support the revival of the aviation industry.
It's a team approach, it's collaboration.
That's the
Yes.
approach we take.
We get a question come in from the team at Transom. Hi guys, will ground handlers expect to see changes in the SGHA, perhaps highlighting or including deep sanitation of cabin, GSE and provision of PPE? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I will also take that one, because we have also we are spearheading and advocating aircraft disinfection, so that we give greater assurance to the traveling public. I think there's nothing more that passengers like than to hear comfort or assurances from airlines that the seats, the cabin, the toilets, and all have been cleaned more intensively and also safely. And so there is an effort that we are extending this throughout the service chain, from the time blankets are folded, they are stored, and then uplifted on the aircraft. On arrival, the aircraft is not only the standard cleaning is done, but the disinfection, whether it's chemical, we are now trialing with other means using UV lights and so on, so that our contribution again is about supporting the growth of the flights. And we want to see that taking place faster, sooner rather than later. So we're doing quite a number of things to make this happen, and we hope that this will take place sooner.
Thank you. Java, did you want to come in on?
Yeah,
I
would just say, I mean, I've already instructed my head of ground ops to amend as an addendum the cleaning section. I, as a previous ground handler, are very aware that the cleaning part of an SLA actually is very poor. I think it's been clearly under focused on by us. It's just been a regular service in the past of emptying the bins and giving a bit of a clean down, but really not focused in enough quality and detail. So we're reviewing our SLA sections within cleaning within the SGHA, and we'll be introducing new standards of requirements, which are clear. We know that we need to pay for these added services, but we need to make sure that the standards are clearly defined as to what we want, so that we can give comfort to both the regulators and our customers who they expect us to have these higher standards. So yes, there will be some changes coming.
Okay, a question from Keith Wood. Thanks for this one. What's the process to achieve the digital check-in, Javid, in the event of power and or systems failures and keep social distancing? What's the backup?
Yeah, so we've got two parts to it. We've got we run on a cloud operation, so outside of the sort of terminal seater type environment, we're not a subscriber to seater or support of their process. So we sit outside of that in terms of using our own cloud system. But we also have localized systems running in each of our airports that are run by AirAsia. And finally, we have the good old-fashioned manual fallback, which used to be sort of bingo sheets, but we've put those onto phones, on our own staff's phones at the teams. So we basically replicate manual check-in, but on a phone that will keep that information just on the phone, and then it's docked where the data is exchanged. If we lose Wi-Fi or if we lose power from the airport, for example. So there are three measures that we've got in place for that.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. Pierrick has a question here for you, Thomas. Do you foresee an increased need in automation to improve safety standards? Is JBT moving to this kind of solution or looking for partnerships to do so?
Yeah, thanks. Interesting question. We have last October during the Munich show, we launched a new option on our loaders called the auto docking option. So basically is you push a button and the loader can approach very safely automatically the aircraft. So this is what we are working on today. We have this option available very, very soon. So this is where we stand today in terms of autonomous vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much. Just for the next one, just something that came out yesterday, and then we'll be covering in the GHI Covid-19 Aviation Weekly newsletter. But EASA here in Europe, the safety agency, have published a paper on some of the enhanced safety and health measures they see in passenger journeys. Very clear there that face masks should be worn from the moment you step inside the airport terminal right through to the point of stepping out of the terminal at your destination airport. A comment from you all perhaps on how you see that being, regulated, and they're very clear that, if someone removes the mask, that it should be dealt with as a very serious breach of protocol, and perhaps lead to the passenger being escorted from the terminal, not completing their journey. I mean, how are we going to regulate this?
So I can tell you in what I've seen in Kuala Lumpur at the moment, and we're starting to see this in other airports. But the airport has already introduced new thermal scanners that detect the wearing of a mask, and if you're not wearing a mask, you're not permitted entry into the terminal at the first place. I, having spent a few years in India, became a strong supporter of what India has done in terms of the airport entrances. They have for 70 years made sure that only the traveling passenger gets through the main terminal building and no meter greeters come through. Now in the West, that was always seen as that's a poor service and it's not very customer friendly. And of course, the airport commercial folks may felt that they lost opportunities to retail. However, if you look at what happened in Brussels, and we wouldn't have had that same level of risk. And now clearly what we can see is that by manning the front entrances to the airport terminal building, you can control who comes in and who comes out. So I see that to happen more, and I see that control to be in place. And I think regulations clearly are coming that will start to enforce legality-wise how people do that. I don't see that as the airline's responsibility. I do see that as the airport operators. We have a role then to play in that before boarding, that we don't allow people to go on if they're not still wearing those masks, as we have a responsibility to the fellow passengers and our all-stars, our employees as we call them. But we see that, and we will be very strict on that for sure, in terms of denying boarding and or offloading somebody that refuses to wear a mask at this time, because we cannot afford to take that risk but in reputation of safety. But there's technology there that's helping already in terms of recognition software.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the panel want to comment on face masks and the practicalities of ensuring that they are worn at all times? No takers? I'll move on to the next question then. Okay, so this is something, Javed, you touched on a moment ago, but we've had a request for a word about the valuable role cargo is playing in these challenging times, and perhaps some more comments about how prominent the cargo sector of our business has become over these past few months.
Sure. I mean, as I said, to me, it's always been an important one, but it's really come to the forefront in terms of the ability to keep our aircraft flying, firstly. We've been welcomed by governments that have allowed us to operate relief flights for cargo in terms of China, masks and disinfectant material, aprons, etc. We've run a number of those. It's also, our focus on cargo is a little bit different. We call our cargo business teleport, and our teleport business has been focused on what in ASEAN, what we see as a niche, which is the social entrepreneur. And actually, since COVID, it's become even more important. These are the people that really at home that might be making some goodies at home, or baking some cakes, or somebody that might be making a product in their front yard, in their front home, but didn't really have the logistics network to connect to. With COVID-19, restaurants closing down, you couldn't go out to eat. People all started to learn to cook more. I'm sure most of the people that are connected on air have probably tried to do some form of cooking while they've been locked down for the last 8, 9, 10 weeks. In doing so, we've all become little master chefs of our own little empires. And we found that actually some people have been really good in the way they've gone on social media and promoted that cooking. Well, then we extended our teleport services to say, hey, can we deliver that for you? And using our teleport network and our platform, we were able to pick up with drivers from your home, bring it onto an aircraft that had capacity, and take it on our cargo routes to neighboring cities within the domestic market. So it's been a vital part for us to have a bit of cash flow, to continue the economic system of the country moving with the vital supply chain that was needed, but also to support the relief effort. Secondary to that is that we looked and got approvals for fitting out our cabins so that we could actually carry cargo inside the passenger aircraft, passenger cabin. We've got that for our narrow-bodied operation. We've not yet received approval for our wide-bodied operation, which has been a bit limiting. We would have been able to do more had we got our regulator to give us that approval. But on narrow-bodied, we were carrying cargo inside the aircraft, passenger cabin, as well as inside the hold.
And how likely do you think it is that as a consequence of this pandemic, airlines will look to de-risk their operation and perhaps re-embrace cargo as an element of revenue stream, whereas previously, PAX paid the bills and was the most...
Oh, definitely. We definitely will be doing a lot more on our teleport business side. We will be looking at aircraft if we can convert some of those to cargo freighter aircraft, dedicated. That's the level of investment we're willing to make. We see the potential in Asia particularly, in our space anyway, and we really want to go for that market quite aggressively. We think that it's not being served as well as it could be, especially within the low cost. I have 1 million tons of capacity on my 270 plus aircraft. We weren't even using 100,000 tons of that until last year. So, we're now climbing up towards 300,000 plus. But we've got 1 million tons and we want to fill that and make use of that. That's as big as some of the big global legacy players out there that have huge cargo divisions. So, yeah, for us, it's a big opportunity.
Thank you, Javed. Brendan, I have a question for you from Cam Weng. Hello, Cam Weng from POS Aviation. So on government support packages, it seems that globally the same issue arises where ground handlers do not receive the government support and it goes mainly to the airlines. How can awareness of the importance of ground handling to the aviation industry be raised to generate that government support?
It's really just about lobbying and using associations and also companies directly lobbying their governments. But to be honest with you, so far we haven't seen much financial support for aviation companies other than airlines. And it's I guess it's a bit of a harder argument to make, and the airlines are often government owned to begin with. They're more maybe easier to persuade because of the economic impact, because it's more obvious, even though of course airlines cannot exist without all these other companies around them. And also the international nature of a lot of the other companies where they're owned by investors overseas. There was an example in Switzerland, for example, where Swissport applied for financial support and were rejected, unlike Swiss, the airline, and the reason is that they were Asian-owned rather than Swiss-owned, which is, I guess, a valid argument, but that's the reality of it. However, there are support available through the general support packages, which are eligible for all companies that are impacted by this crisis in a wide range of countries. And that involves sometimes the wage support packages, but also there's a lot of countries, unfortunately not as many in Asia as there are in Europe and some of the other regions, that where you can get soft loans and loan guarantees, especially for SMEs. So especially some of the smaller companies, handling companies rather than the big multinational ones. And I imagine that a lot of these companies have taken advantage of it, but it's just it's not publicized because it's not aviation specific packages, and it's not in the media like it is with the big airline bailout packages.
So if we want it, we're gonna, as ground handling industry, we're gonna have to really fight hard and make our case.
Yeah, and also each company has to look for their own packages in what they're eligible for in their own countries, and I imagine a lot of that's been done. It just hasn't been publicized. I also want to just quickly answer the cargo question. The cargo is a fantastic opportunity for airlines and handling companies, of course, that have diversified businesses to do less passengers and more cargo. But it's you got to look at it as short term and long term. Short term. To try to turn your business into more cargo, cargo conversions, like removing the seats, but not doing a full cargo conversion, which is very expensive and time consuming, which includes basically reinforcing the floors and recertifying the aircraft, but just removing the seats. There's some temporary conversions for like A330s and A320s, AirAsia, for example, which increases your payload significantly, but you can put the seats back in a year from now when the demand comes back. The reason the long-term solutions are more difficult is because cargo was used to mainly be covered by belly cargo, and there was surplus capacity because so much passenger aircraft growth. So now, because cargo rates have gone up significantly because there's no belly capacity, airlines are like looking at that and saying, obviously want that revenue. But the thing is in a couple of years when the recovery occurs, the cargo rates will come back down again. A lot of it will be covered by belly, and it still needs to be pursued, but you might not want to make long-term investments that involve that are very expensive and time-consuming, because this might be short-term.
Thank you, Brenda. A question from John Bolt. Hi, John, from Damarel. Although it all connects, much of the focus on the industry has been supporting airlines with little attention to their supply chain, specifically ground handlers. I'd like to hear more from ground handlers about how they see the future, what support they need, and how we deliver against expectations. Yakub.
Thank you. I think I like to put this in a little bit in perspective. At least in the case of Singapore, the support that has been extended by the government cuts across the aviation sector. So it's not just airlines, but everyone associated with aviation has enjoyed support from the government. And as I said earlier, not in one budget, but in 4 budgets so far that has been announced over the last few months. So because I think it is recognized that it is a business that cuts across a wider spectrum that contributes to the economy, to the tourism, and so on. So that support has been more pervasive than just having it limited to the airlines. But I think it is also important that as we move forward, we need to take into account that it will not be business as usual. I don't think we can anticipate that it will be 100% back normal in the next year or so. I would be surprised if it does. I would love to see that happen. I think probably we'll be quite fortunate if we get to say 75% of where we were in the next 18 months, because I think the confidence building process will need to take its course. We hope there will be no second wave or third wave, because that's a relative unknown. So it's even more important in order to avoid a second wave or third wave that there is very close collaboration among members of the community, the stakeholders, the ecosystem, and that we are very tightly knitted in this process, and therefore we give safety the highest priority, from something as simple as wearing a mask from the time you arrive at the airport and from the time you disembark and depart, from making sure things are as contactless as possible. So these are all the changes, the deep changes that are going to take place in the future, and how we go about doing this will probably influence the kind of resilience that we are going to see in the future, and how that kind of growth is going to take place. So I think change will be the order of things to come. And I think everyone, yeah.
We'll pick up on a few topics there, but I just want to hand a question over to Thomas that we had pre-webinar, which asks, the new guidelines say disinfection and sanitization of GSE is mandatory. What's the difference between these two processes? And then what's the recommended disinfection agent for GSE and frequency? So can you enlighten us, Thomas?
Yeah, the thing is, you need to clean your machine, like today with sanitization, or like just only water and soap. You need to clean the seat, the wheel, something like this.
Is that different to disinfection? I think the question is, are they just ubiquitous terms, or are they separate processes, sanitization and disinfection?
For me, at this point, yeah, for me, I don't have all the information on this, but what we recommend to our customers, especially when the machine is come back, going back to service, is like to clean the machine more deeply than usual. Like especially, the place where the driver is sitting, like all the environment of the driver, to be sure that everything is clean before return to service.
And you would recommend a specific cleaning agent to your customers?
Yeah.
Or is something developed? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just comment on that?
Yes.
We're using the ICAO recommended aircraft cleaning agent material, the liquids, to include our equipment, our steps, our personnel, our vacuum cleaners, although they're used for just the aircraft because they recommend that to be the best sanitization liquid that is obviously also safe for human beings and in the public space. We're using the same material with anti-fogging machines. These are the sort of misting machines that you see being waved around. We use those so that we can get to a large area like our lower deck loaders, our tractors, our conveyor belts, as well as our steps where passengers do come into contact, and our buses cleaned down. So that the standard of what we do on the ground is the same of what we do for in the air cabin. There is no differentiation, but it also means that we've got the highest possible standards that can be audited and traced, rather than any local liquids or just soap and hot water that may or may not be the best from a disinfectant sanitization perspective. Obviously wash down, it's fine, but when you want to kill off some germs, you want to make sure that you're getting that 99.97+%, which is what these liquids by ICAO allow us to do at this point. And of course UVC lights are also another one that help.
Yes, we've got a question coming up on that one in a second. On disinfection points, something that EASA here in Europe is recommending is disinfection points right before the passengers step onto the aircraft. So for feet, trays, for hand washing at that point at the top of the passenger steps or on the boarding bridge. Is that something that you guys are looking at as a final step before they go onto the aircraft?
As an airline, no, we're not looking at that. We would expect the airport, if they're going to put in measures like that to deal with thousands of people through the same space, that be done as part of the infrastructure. Much like when foot and mouth disease and MERS was done, there were trays all over the world on the arrival jetty. But no, there's an airline, we wouldn't be looking to put something like that in place.
Okay, I've got a question here that I wanted to touch on from Ben Griffin, which is to the panel. Ben says, are the new measures being suggested not just money spent to satisfy the fears of the passengers and governments, when what should be happening is the business community and the governments working together to re-educate the public in the fact that COVID-19 is here to stay and no amount of measures will stop it marching on and affecting those who are susceptible to it? Controversial one, but your view. So how much of this is being done? I mean, and I guess it comes back to your point, Javid, how much of this is about confidence and psychology as much as science and restoring confidence?
Yeah, look, I don't know where sorry, was it Bernard?
Ben Griffin.
I'm not sure where Ben's country of nationality is, but I would leave that to his prime minister and his president, or his. It's the job of the government, and they're finding it a challenge to get public to understand, accept, and comply. We can see that clearly on the news in the way that countries are struggling. So if they're struggling, I don't know how we certainly can do. I agree, and as I said, at the beginning and the end, collaboration is queen. We all have to collaborate if we're going to get people to go back to whatever is the new norm. If we still think, if we put our head in the sand and think that once it's all over it will all be wonderful and we'll return, then we're really kidding ourselves. But we've got to do our bit, and for us, it is just about giving trust and confidence. We don't see any more than we can do as an airline. Of course, we're talking to the prime ministers and the ministers and the transport ministers, etc., and the regulators. But that's all about saying, look, we're ready. We've demonstrated all the safety practices to allow people to come onto our aircraft and leave the airports in a safe and manageable manner. That's all we can do. But if people, don't understand what personal safety means or what personal hygiene means, then that's something that, it's up to the governments and their ministries and their home offices to try to get the wider public to accept. But in the aviation space, I think we're doing a well-connected, good job to educate, inform, and even control, where need be, the public. And to be fair, what I've seen is very, very compliant public that's traveling, where they're wearing masks, they're bringing their own gloves, they're bringing their own sanitization liquids. People are very, very aware, more than they probably ever have been in terms of compliance to us.
But categorically, as you touched on in the presentation, middle seat distancing is not part of that. So once you're on the aircraft, no.
No, I mean, 2 meters, there's enough science out there that says anything from 6 to 8 to 12 feet. Reality is none of those are going to be satisfied in an aircraft. All of these various messages and YouTube videos and WhatsApp messages that you'll start to see about companies coming up with schemes and shields and visors on middle seats and turning middle seats around, all have a risk of evacuation. You know, you've got to evacuate that aircraft in very few minutes, you know, and they're going to add the risk and complexity of trying to get people to understand and comply. So I don't see middle seats being the answer, certainly from distancing, nor do I see introducing more weight and more complexity to the evacuation process with having sneeze guards and screens in front of you and helmets on top of you and all of these wonderful, great innovations, but I just don't see them being realistic at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from Keith Oliver, who asks, to you, Javid, the digital transformation is great for passengers and aircrew. What digital transformation are you guys doing for GSE and ground handling crews?
So on the GSE side, I really believe, and we would be looking at more autonomous vehicles, tractors particularly. If we can remove the drivers out completely, it's one less contact point, especially if you've got long distances. So I think autonomous vehicles in airfields and aprons is a way to go, particularly, and we've been trying to do some trials here in Malaysia with that. So definitely there. Obviously, on the ramp side, all of the mobility-based technologies for ramp control, loading instructions, we're introducing something called BIC, baggage image capture, which helps the loaders to offload baggage and also load correct luggage with the image itself being a color image sent to a handheld device, removing the paper, conventional sort of loading sheets. So I think we can just automate, simplify in terms of technology as much as we can. On the GSE side, it's autonomous for me. The more we can do that, the more that we can remove people out of the equation, the better in terms of compliance, quality, and safety standards, personally.
And as Thomas said in his presentation, we all talked about the advent of autonomous GSE and new technology, and this COVID-19 crisis will be the burning platform that makes it happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. But also, like Javid, what you were saying about the cargo, activity that is ongoing, with the conversion on passenger aircraft to cargo aircraft. We are working on some project really soon. We're going to release that to be able to unload, the passenger aircraft with the cargo. We will have a solution very soon, because this webinar is also to provide solution to airlines and ground handler. So we are going to launch a new product to be able to unload the passenger aircraft that you use as a cargo aircraft. So this is something that you will be very interesting, very very easy to install very very soon. So I can.
And look, I'm realistic, and I've been in India, I've been in Asia quite a bit of time. I know that there's markets where the human person, the human body, the manpower that costs versus some of the Western costs drive decisions clearly, and maybe deter technology. But I don't think that we're in that space of looking at the people cost versus equipment costs anymore, when we're looking at preventing humans from getting infections, preventing humans from being exposed. Safety of that nature becomes the higher priority than it does in the conventional aviation safety sense. We now have to think about our operators, and by default, why I introduced contactless for crew briefing. It's just a keyboard and a mouse, but it's one less contact place that my crew have of touching maybe something that got infected by another crew member. So we remove that need. Wherever we can do that, whether that be in Africa, whether that be in Asia, or whether that be in South Asia, in my regions where labor costs are low or safety standards in some countries can be quite challenging, we've still got to look at automation, but it might need the governments to accelerate investments or funding of some sorts of schemes to try to drive it. But we should accelerate the autonomous discussion at any smallest level or automation level that we can. It doesn't have to be full of, we're not talking about the Teslas of the world of full autonomous highways that maybe US and some countries in Europe and Switzerland, for example, might be able to aspire to, or Singapore. I'm talking about small practical steps that remove people pushing buttons, automation type.
Thanks, David. Just aware, I think, if my maths is right, it's just gone 5 o'clock with you guys in Singapore. I'm going to suggest we run on for about another 15, 20 minutes, and let's get through as many questions as we can in the next 20 minutes. Yes, Yakub.
Max and fellow panelists, in the spirit of collaboration is king, or queen rather, I've got an engagement with a customer at 5, so I will take my
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
but
Yakub.
if there are any things I can share, I'm happy to do so bilaterally. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing time with us. And any good questions that people have for Yakub, we'll pass on to you. And if you could respond in your own due time, that would be great. But thank you very much for joining us, Yakub.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me go on to our next question, which I think, sorry, just let me find it. I had one here about UV light, which is something we touched on a moment ago. I think it was from David O'Connell. Hi, David. But I seem to have lost it. So I don't know if you can. Oh, here we go. David's question was, has any testing been done on how long UVC rays need to be present to kill the virus? How is it ensured that UVC light will reach all surfaces? And what are the safe distances of people in the vicinity of UVC rays? Any experts? Javed, I think you touched on this.
Yeah. I can answer part of it, and towards it, we're actually working with a Malaysian-based company that also has the origins are from Korea, but they're actually trialing a new. It's actually something that's described as UVL. This is a less harmful to human contact light. UVC can be operated, but continuous exposure to UVC is harmful and damaging to the human skin. And so UVC lights, where they are used, are really not ideal for prolonged long-term exposure to the human being, that is. On the UVL, and please don't quote me incorrectly on that name, but it's a new company, new technology that's just been trialed with, and we're actually about to do the trials next week. But this technology allows us, it has less harm, virtually no harm, if not less harm, to the human contact. To a naked skin as such. We're going to be trialing that, but the current UVC lights, I believe there's one out there at the moment, and we're waiting for the product to arrive, Germ Falcon, which is like a catering trolley with wings on, fundamentally with light bulbs stuck to either side of the wings. We see that they promote that to have a 5 to 7 minute span to do a narrow-bodied aircraft, covering all of the open contact areas like belts and tray tables, food tables, seats, etc., with a 99.9+% killing of germs and bacteria and disinfection. So we'll be trialing that out. I don't have that yet. We've been doing some tests at smaller scales, but we're going to be doing that on larger flights in the coming weeks.
Thanks, David. Another question for you from John Lilas, who says, great presentation. See AirAsia have some advantages in Kuala Lumpur with a dedicated terminal being the only operator, but how do you see your processes being rolled out in shared terminals?
Yeah, we don't see any limitations. I mean, our other 18 airports in Malaysia, but also our Thailand operation in Don Muang, we already have rolled out the same technologies. We've got approvals from all of our regulated airports with our Faces technology already. In fact, in a lot of them, they want to partner with us to roll out the technologies. My approach has been very collaborative. We've talked about the growth to the economy, how we can bring data, and how we can maybe share some of that data to allow, on the subject of passengers, obviously agreeing to, allowing to engage better with the guests. And that's allowed the airports to talk to us. It's helped me, John, being an ex-airport person, know what makes them tick as well, to be able to have the right conversation. So no, we don't see any barriers, John, to introducing the right technologies that we want. And where we do, then we really take, we will take the challenge on to say why we believe what we are bringing to the public is right, and why it also helps our cost base. And worst case scenarios where we can't agree, where we don't see the opportunities and we see costs go up, then we equally don't operate in those airports if we have to. We're very clear on what is right for the business to drive the cost down, and we won't have costs put up that end up going to the guest in under any circumstances.
Thank you, Javid. Sultan Rashid has a question. Is any airport or ground handler disinfecting import cargoes at the warehouse? And if so, under which guidance? Are you aware of?
I'm not aware of. To be fair, I haven't gone to the warehouse to be able to find out if that is happening. So no, I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
A question from Keith. Hi, Keith Purdom, who says, interesting, Javid, that AirAsia is implementing no cabin baggage. How do passengers respond, and is this going to be widespread now amongst all airlines?
So we've received very positive. I mean, no, I thought people might be a bit nervous when I introduced it, but no, we again, as I said, I think public have been more compliant than ever before because they understand the challenge of this COVID situation, but more importantly, they want to travel when they really need to travel. So they'll do anything to be able to get on that plane if they have to get on the plane. I do see it to be something that's going to stay for some time. And I think it's a good thing in terms of helping to board faster, not have the congestion. The thought behind it was that when people have got two handbags or a big wheelie bag, they stand up, they stop, they touch the overhead lockers, they stop, the next person coming past them has to squeeze past, so the whole social distancing gets broken down. And so we needed to prevent that, and it looks like the public are receptive to it. And we're not the only ones. I believe a number of airlines have adopted that same approach. And ours is free, by the way, so we're not charging anything, so we're not even making money for it. So come and travel on airasia.com in Malaysia if you're in Malaysia.
We'll see how many downloads you get on the app after this this webinar. You'll see a pickup.
Counting 359, please.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one of the pre-submitted questions that we had here as we run. We've got about 10 more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. With social distancing requirements, in addition to the PPE and sanitizing procedures fully implemented in the airports, we can minimize the risk of exposure of passengers and our ground handling staff to COVID-19. However, there is no clear process on how we can social distance in the holding lounges, pre-boarding and on the aircraft, which we touched on. Please advise if social distancing can be practical for departure holding gates and aircraft. But we've talked about aircraft, but departure holding gates, some comments.
Well, I'd say it's the airports. You know, it's an airport answer. But in terms of some airports that have got holding gates, we've removed seating out with our airports, and others we've added more seating to be able to get the right level of social distancing. But it's going to vary on every single airport. I mean, some airports are so congested that, you know, if you use the right data again, where airports have installed Bluetooth beacons for queue measurements, for example, something like the Zovis solution, they will actually be able to measure how many people are in the terminal in any one area at one time, and they should not let them through the passenger landside area, the first case. So I think controlling the flow of guests, passengers to your areas to manage, and using CCTV technologies, there's lots of different ways that you could actually flow it. Putting on my old airport hat on, I would be looking at technology to help passenger flow. Okay.
Question from Abdullah Karimli on, again, back to cost, but what about the cost impact of some of the initiatives we've discussed? Can low-cost carriers propose reasonable fares with the context of this complexity? And interesting to see, covering it on our newsletter today, but Swissport have announced price increases between 1% and 50% at stations, airports, because of the complexity of delivering some of these measures and the cost inefficiencies caused by low volumes.
Well, as I said, I mean, our philosophy is not to increase the fares. We will do everything in our power not to increase our fares. We will have to diverse and find other revenue streams, and that's what we'll do. We will negotiate and renegotiate on a number of our contracts, which to be fair, our partners have actually been proactive with us on because they see the longevity of the relationship. But yeah, it is going to hurt in terms of pricing. And we're going to prolong those sort of payments out. It's going to be tough. But what we're not going to do is put fares up. I mean, the public cannot be hit to this, in our view. Now, if the regulators come and enforce, and in some countries they do determine fare tariffs and limits, then of course we don't control that. We will comply to those limits being set. Our intention is not to increase fares, but to look at opportunities to engage and drive revenue through ancillary streams that are different streams than the conventional onboard ancillary revenues.
I would like to take the airfare question. I mean, I get this question a lot, and it's really, I mean, it's really about supply and demand, like it is in any time before or after this crisis. And you know, it's airlines right now in the short term. I see fares continuing to be under pressure, especially here in Asia, because it's been an intensely competitive market. AirAsia is fortunate in that it has the lowest cost among airlines. So, you know, they can actually offer very low fares and still be profitable, while other airlines here in Asia have been unprofitable even before this crisis. But it's really about competition and supply and demand. And with the competition continuing at a very intense rate, a lot of airlines actually right now, they're more desperate than ever for revenues, because they've gone through this period where they had virtually no revenues, and they're really eager to get back in the air, and that will dictate the airfares more so than, say, new requirements, at least in the short term. Now, in the long term, I think the requirements have to be harmonized. We haven't really talked about this before, but we've talked about you know, different requirements that you know, for example, that Javid faces in his markets. You know, and a lot of the requirements right now vary from country to country, which, because it's so far mostly domestic recovery so far, we haven't seen much resumption in international travel. It's been okay so far, but there's a huge effort right now underway to harmonize standards so that airlines you know, don't have to meet different standards in every country that they operate from. The social distancing thing is definitely a main one that's being addressed by IATA and some of the other associations. And because, for example, here in Asia, there are some countries like Thailand that have social distancing on airplanes, but there are other countries like Vietnam and China, Korea, for example, that don't have social distancing requirements. And this can't continue. And airports, for that matter, as well. We have a lot of very congested airports in Asia, which once traffic recovers, it's going to be very difficult. But you know, unless there's very clear standards in place to comply with, and also a lot of research still needs to be done as well. Obviously, there's a lot of testing of technologies, there's a lot of opportunities, but a lot of research has to be done, and a lot of awareness has to be done in terms of the governments to make sure that the reset of the industry is done correctly, and that the traveling public is, you know, feels safe, and that the airlines can be profitable again in the long run, and as well as the handling companies. I mean, the answer is not to just jack up the fees in the short term or jack up the fares in the short term. That's not going to help anyone. Thanks,
Brendan. Just two last questions. We'll finish up in 5 minutes' time. Javid, you know, the quote of the day is around, you know, collaboration is queen. But the question here is around, you know, what would your expectation be of how stakeholders remaining after this crisis perform that collaboration? What does it look like in the future?
I think be open to change the way you work, look at technology, and find common ways to procure, to drive cost savings in whether it be the products that you buy, the technology you procure, you know, partnering. An example of that is us as AirAsia using our AirAsia name to go and negotiate PPE in China, but actually our handling agents are buying the PPE, our cleaning companies are buying the PPE, but we're able to get it for them at a much larger price. at a reduction, sorry, as a price. So they see a cost reduction. Now, that's us being collaborative in partnering. We financially then benefit in the sense that, you know, we're not going to see higher cost rates coming back to us. They can afford to take a lower cost and make sure that they don't pass that back to us, right? So I think it's about partnering, being open to those new ways of thinking, but also adopting technology as quickly as you can even imagine. I think Thomas said earlier on, but the technology, the new technologies, some of them are just simple, basic things, but we've got to do them quickly together. How do we do that? So partner, but be open to talk. Don't be a supplier and a customer. Don't take the approach that you're a service provider and I'm the airline. I mean, that's not the approach that I take to work with. And for us, it's working because we try to look at the long-term, bigger picture, not the short-term. As Brendan correctly said, this is a although it's a year, 18 months, probably 2 years of pain, in the scheme of the industry, it's just a short-term pain that we have to go through, but we've got to get smarter together through it. Otherwise, there's going to be many more casualties.
So the status quos no longer apply, and be pragmatic and innovative, and that's
if regulators are evolving and regulators are changing policies overnight from insisting on paper boarding cards for decades to having digital electronic boarding cards overnight, then we definitely can move. We definitely can evolve, because we've always been the innovators as the industry, but the regulator was always seen as the Luddite. Well, they're actually moving faster because they don't want to be caught in the middle of this political and public storm of not providing safe travel.
I'm just going to, a final question, concluding question, ask you all to give an outlook, get your crystal balls out, but just give us your thoughts on what the remainder of 2020 looks like. So volumes during the course of the summer, moving into the autumn, and I appreciate that you're not clairvoyants, but on your best educated guesses, how does the rest of this year look, do you think, for the aviation industry? Who wants to go first? You're all on mute. Brendan.
I'll go first. I mean, 2020 is at least a little bit predictable, compared to 21 and 22, which is very hard to predict because there's so many uncertainties with the vaccines and so forth. But it's going to be a domestic focused recovery. So those airlines and those providers that have more of a domestic business are in the short-term advantage. Because even though there's talk about travel bubbles and a restart of the international market as soon as July, it's going to be a very select number of countries, and there's going to be very low volumes for most of the rest of this year internationally. But domestically, there's more of an opportunity to resume, not normal volumes, but closer to normal volumes. So in China, for example, right now we're at about 50% normal domestic volumes, and this is 2 months into their recovery because they were able to contain the virus first, obviously having experienced it first. South Korea is starting to is kind of on that path as well, but a smaller domestic market, and we're going to see it in other markets. Vietnam is increasing a lot this month because they have contained the virus. We're going to hopefully see it in markets like Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Thailand, Australia, all the other main domestic markets, Japan. There's 1.2 billion domestic passengers per year in Asia Pacific. That is about more than half of the overall traffic in Asia Pacific. A lot of people focus on international, but the volume is in domestic, and it is those big domestic markets that can recover first, and a lot of the focus has to be on increasing the comfort level of the passengers so that maybe they'll take domestic holidays instead of international holidays. And that they'll feel comfortable about flying. The governments need to do the right thing in terms of putting in the right requirements and standards in a well communicated, uniform way that's not only uniform like within the region, like ASEAN needs to get together and do something, because right now ASEAN is just all over the place. If you look at individual countries, even if you look at one country like Indonesia, the last few weeks they suspended all domestic flights. Then a week later, they brought it back, but had certain rules about flying, and then some of the airlines canceled again 4 days later because they couldn't meet all the regulations. It's been all over the place. So everybody has to work together and initially focus on domestic, and then we'll have some recovery. But for that 1.2 billion, a lot of that traffic can come back by the end of the year, and towards the end of the year we can see near regular domestic markets. International is going to take a lot longer. So those countries, those airlines, those companies with higher domestic exposure will be a little bit more in a better position than those with international exposure. Unfortunate for those of us in Singapore, but that's the reality.
Thank you, Brendan. Very interesting. Thomas and Javid, your thoughts.
Yeah, we
Thomas.
Yeah, no, it's always difficult to predict. What we don't have any crystal ball, definitely. And for GAC is more difficult because we need to have the market have to come back to normal, and after maybe the airlines and the Grenella will invest to new machines and stuff like this. So it's very difficult for us to project ourselves right now. But what I want to say to the audience is GBT, we are moving to just only selling just equipment. We are moving also to a kind of a solution provider. So this is what Javid was talking about. So we are on the long-term relationship with our customer. It's just, especially during this COVID-19 crisis, is to help our customer on the airlines and on the granular to go through this crisis together, to bring very concrete solution, a real solution to help our customers. So it can be, I was talking about the rent to buy program. We can refurb some machine. We need to be very agile. And what Javid was saying is the key point is communication. Communication during this time, in this crisis, communication between customer and also internally is very important to move forward and to go through this crisis. Cargo, for us, cargo is working very well. All the freighters are working very well. We have also different other market. The military is working very well. We know that for the airlines and Grenella is very difficult. So we are working with them to go through that and to bring a solution.
Thank you, Thomas. Javid.
Now, for us, I would see similar to what Brendan has said, but I think if I were to see around 40% of my domestic numbers as last year come back by December, I will be pleased. Given the current start that I see is less than 4% in the last 8 weeks that we've been doing domestic. Obviously heavily impacted by whatever governments come up with in terms of policies and processes, but we don't see that be more than 40% by the end of the year, and then growing steadily into next year, Q1. Then we start to see some international travel green shoots come into Q2, and all of 2021. If we achieve 60 to 70% of where we were of 2019, it would be a very good recovery. But we don't see it go more than that. And then 2022 is where we see the sort of growth that we would expect to come close to 80+% of 2019 numbers, going towards back to 2019 towards the end of 2022. That's how we see it. But obviously it's heavily influenced by whatever governments come back with. And as Brendan correctly said, we've got a few in the region that are flip-flopping between what they should and should not do. And some of them are trying to go back to very prehistoric measures, like everybody should buy a ticket from a ticket desk when we're trying to go contactless. So there are a few misunderstandings in government. So spending time with them a lot, our government teams probably have had the highest relationship building they've ever had. So keeping collaboration as queen and cash as king is really the drivers for us at this point. Those two things, if we keep those two things in mind, we will be ready to sort of have the growth that we expect to see, and we expect to be here in 2022, leading the way in Asia, and particularly with even more market share.
Thank you, Javid. The story's going to run, as they say, lots more to come. Well, thank you all very much, Andy Yakub, for your time and your excellent presentations. You get there we go, there's a round of applause on behalf of the 380 odd people that are out there listening to it. Unfortunately, you don't hear it like you do in the live auditorium. But thank you all very much for your time and your insight today. We really appreciate it. Thank you everyone who logged on. We will be providing a link through to the recording of the webinar. I know a few people have been asking, so you can watch it again. We'll also look to get links sent out so that people can have a look at the presentations. We've had a few questions about that as well. And apologies we didn't get through all your questions. We'll see what we can do to get some of those answered. We ran out of time. It is our first webinar, so we hope that you enjoyed it. We have another one planned for the 25th of June, and we'll send on more details about that. And we're also asking you to complete a very short, quick survey about your experience this afternoon for most of you, this morning for some in Europe. And just let us know what you thought of it, what areas we can improve on. It was our first rollout, and we will look to enhance it and improve the service for our next webinar on the 25th of June. Thank you all very much. Great to have a route to talk to you all again. Hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, look after yourselves, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you
very much.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.